everyone, this is Dr. Alsaffar, ITCS 114 Computer Programming 2. After learning how to define classes and how to create objects from these classes, in this lecture we will talk more about objects and methods as well. The first thing that we need to cover is more about constructors. What are constructors and when we can use constructors and when these constructors are called. A constructor is a special method that you define inside the class. Its purpose is to initialize the instance variables of the object. Remember that when you create an object, how you do that in Java, you first write the name of the class, followed by a reference, which will be the variable of the object, followed by equal sign, followed by the keyword new. What comes after new will be the name of the constructor. So what does the constructor do? It first creates the object, and at the same time it is used to initialize the values of the instance variables. Now these constructors are a special method. That means they are not called explicitly by using dot. They are called automatically when you create an object. So the call of this method, what comes after the word new. So when you write a new, then you write the name of the constructor, and it depends on how many constructors you have, you specify the appropriate constructor to initialize your instance variables. So the question is how to define a constructor in your class. To define a constructor in your class, first, it must have the same name as the class. Second, it should not retain any type, not even void. Remember that if you want to define a method, how you define a method, you write public, followed by the retain type, integer, double, long, and etc., followed by the name of the method. Between round brackets, we specify the parameters. Now, if you want to define a constructor, you just follow the same syntax, but don't specify anything for the retain type, just leave it empty, and make sure that the name of the method is the same as the name of the class. It is similar to methods. Constructors can have also parameters, and these parameters are used to initialize the instance variables of the class. As we will see in a moment, that you are allowed to define more than one constructor. So you're not restricted to define only one constructor. Sometimes you would like to initialize your objects created from the same class in different ways, according to the data members. So you can define more than one definition, but the difference between each definition concentrates on number and type of the parameters. So when you define more than one constructor, make sure that the parameters are different in terms of number and in terms of data types. After knowing that we could have more than one constructor, next we need to know what is a default constructor. A default constructor is a constructor without parameters. And why it is called default? Because its purpose is to initialize the instance variables with default values. And this is why when you don't define a constructor in your class, after new, you write the name of the class with empty brackets. That's why we don't include any parameters, so that the system will give us one to use. However, if you define at least one constructor, then Java will not define any default constructor. And if you want to define a default constructor, then you have to define it by yourself. Now, when you define or design your class using UML, usually the default constructors are not included in the class diagram. Now, take a look at this example. The name of the class is called pet, and this class has 3 constructors. See what comes after new? It is the same name as the class, so this is the constructor. The first constructor has 3 parameters. The first is a string, second is integer, third is double. The second constructor has only one parameter, which is a string, and the third constructor has no parameters, and this constructor is called the default constructor. For our example on defining more than one constructor, we will define a class called pet, and it will represent pets. So this is the class diagram, UML. As you see that it consists of three instance variables. The first one is the name of the pet, which is a string. The second is the age of the pet, and the third is the weight of the pet, which is double. These are the methods that are defined inside pet. One is for writing the output, which is displaying this information, the instance variables, whenever it is required. And the second method is used for setting the three instance variables at once. So you provide as input parameter the name of the pet, the age, and the weight, and the method will set the three instance variables with these parameters. The next method is for setting the name, and for setting the age, and for setting the weight separately. And last, for reading the values of these instance variables, we use getName, getAge, and getWeight. Notice that the instance variables, we have minus sign in front of them. That means that we define them as private. And see the methods in front of them, there are pluses. That means they are defined as public. The definition for the class in details is listed here. First, we start by saying public class, followed by the name of the class, then followed by the instance variables. As you see, we have three instance variables. We have the name of the pet, the age, and the weight. And here we have the first constructor, which is a default constructor because it does not have any input parameter. And as you see, what does it do? It gives an initial value for the name of the pet, which is a string by the constant no name yet, and the default age is 0, and the default weight is 0 as well. Now for the second constructor, it has three input parameters. It has the name of the pet, the age of the pet, and the weight of the pet. So when you want to create an object and you already know the name of the pet and age and weight, then you can use this constructor to create the object for this pet. What does it do? As you see that it will copy the name directly to the instance variable name, but for age and for weight, it will check if any of them is negative, then it will print an error message and it will exit the program. But if the initial age and initial weight are valid, then these will be copied into the instance variables age and weight. So this is the second constructor. For this third constructor, it initializes only the name of the pet, and it puts default values for age and weight. And see, the age and weight are equal to 0. So this constructor, if you know the name of the pet and you would like to create an object with default values for age and weight, this is the constructor that you should use. Another constructor that initializes an object if you know the age of the pet. So what will be the default name? It will be given the name no name yet, and as you see, it will give the default weight 0, and it will check for the input parameter initial age. If it is less than 0, and again it will print an error message and quit the program, the whole program. Otherwise, it will simply copy the input parameters into age. The last constructor, it creates an object if we know the weight of the pet. As you see that it is double. So the default name given is no name yet as a constant, and the default age will be given to 0. Like what we have done in the previous constructor, this constructor will check for the initial weight given as input parameter. If it is negative, again it will print an error. Negative weight is not accepted, and we will quit the program, exit the program. Otherwise, it will copy the initial weight given as input parameter and save it into weight. So we have more than one constructor. So how the compiler knows which constructor we would like to use? It uses the parameters, their numbers and types as signature. So if you define as an example a name as a string followed by an integer followed by a double value, then the compiler will understand that you need this constructor and it will call it automatically. However, if you specify as input parameter the constructor only a double value, not integer value, so which constructor it will be used? This constructor will be used. Why? Because the input parameter is double. And if the input parameter is integer, only one parameter as an integer in the constructor, so which constructor will be used? This constructor will be used. Why? Because the input parameter is integer. So the compiler, Java compiler, depends on the number of parameters as well as the type of the parameters and their order when you supply them into the constructor, and it will pick the correct constructor. After defining the constructors, let us see the rest of the methods. We have a method that is called set, and remember that these methods are called after the object is created. However, the constructors are called automatically when you create the object. So these methods are available, and as you see, its purpose or its job is similar to one of the constructors. When you supply a new name, a new age, and a new weight, it will update the values for the pet name, the pet age, and the pet weight. This is the definition for setting the name of the pet. This is the definition for setting the age of the pet, and see, we are testing for the age if it is negative or not. And this is for setting the weight, similar to age, but here we are using double for the input parameter. And these are the three getters for the three instance variables. And last, we have the method for displaying the information of the pet, name followed by the name of the pet, age followed by the age and how many years, and then followed by weight, how many pounds. To test this class, we need to create a demo class application that has the main method and create objects from this class. This is now our main program, which is a separate class. We call it pet demo that will use the pet class. So let us follow the steps in here one by one, and also we will follow what is the output. Now, the first step we are having here is writing pet, your pet, writing a new, and then we have a pet, which is the constructor. You know that for the pet class, it has more than one definition for a constructor. So which constructor it will use? It will use the right constructor that has a string input parameter, single parameter with a string as input parameter. Let us see from the class definition, where is this constructor? Now this is the definition again. This is default constructor. This is a constructor with 3 input parameters. This is a constructor that has the string as input, so it is going to use this constructor. So it will copy the name of the pet into name, but it will give age and weight default values. So let's go back to the main program. So now the name for your pet is called Jane Doe, and the age will be 0 and the weight will be 0. Going next, 2 messages are displayed on the screen. My records on your pet are inaccurate. Here is what they currently say. Now we are calling your pet.write output, so the name of the object is your pet, and here we are calling the write output method, and simply it will display the information of this pet. So let us see, as you see, the name and age and weight are equal to 0. Next, the program will print a message, please enter the correct pet name, and as an example, if the user types Moonchild as a name, then we have a special method that will change the name of the pet, which is called setName, and we are given the name, which is Moonchild, for your pet. So your pet will have a different name now. It's not called Jane Doe, it will be called Moonchild. In the next steps, in the next step, another message is displayed, which is please enter the correct pet age, because as you see, we are creating a pet object, but age is 0 and weight is 0. And now we will ask the user to give us the correct age and weight. So a message is displayed. Suppose the user typed 5. So again, we have a method for setting age. We are going to call this method yourPet.setAge, and we are going to give the correct age as input parameter, and the method will change the age from 0 into 5. Next, we will ask the user to enter the correct pet weight, and if the correct pet weight given by the user is 24.5, then we have a setWeight method. It will change the value for the default weight, which was 0. It will change it to 24.5. Finally, after updating the name, the age, and weight, we will ask the object to print itself by calling the method writeOutput, and as you can see, the name has changed to Moonchild, and age was changed to 5, and weight was changed to 24.5 pounds. When we create an object from a class, what really happens inside the memory? Let us have a look to some examples. Now, when you write pet fish only without creating an object, see here we are not writing equal new. So no object will be created. But fish will be a place in the memory, but its contents will be empty, so it holds nothing. So this is like a variable with no data inside it. However, if you write fish equal new, so new here will create an object, and remember that for the pet it has a name, age, and weight. So it will create an object and will put data for these instance variables and will save them somewhere in the memory. So notice now the variable fish is in one place and the content of the object are saved in different places. So what fish will hold? It will hold the address of the place of the content of the object. So if the content of the object are placed at address 5432, so fish will hold the address of this object, which is 543. So this is why we call fish a reference. So it's a variable in the memory, but its contents will be a location of the object. This is why we call it a reference.